Quite often, when there are those who come to visit, the parallel has been made, or the metaphor or the analogy of what the spiritual path is, and it's described as being the emptying and dismantling of our house. First of all, we clean out the cupboards, we take out the extra furniture and accoutrements, we get rid of the antiques, and then we take down the drapes and curtains and let some light in. And then it goes on with that. The windows come out, the roof is taken off, the walls come down, until finally we're left with a foundation stone. There are 3 stories, and the first is just that anecdote we know very well about the 2 Arabs sitting on the side of the road smoking their hubble bubble pipe in a state of blissful euphoria, when all of a sudden a camel comes lumbering by, and one Arab turns to the other and says, "What does that camel remind you of?" And his friend says, "Food." And quickly the other Arab turns around and said, "But we're Arabs, we don't eat camels." And the other one said, "But everything reminds me of food." And then there's that little story about the woodchopper. Now, every day of his life he went out into the forest and he chopped wood. But he had to load his wood onto the back of his donkey, and he had to travel over a mountain pass to bring it to the place where he could sell it in a village. But one day, when he, with a load of wood on his donkey, was at the apex of the mountain, a group of soldiers accosted him. And they said to him, they had a need of a donkey. So they said, "How much do you want for your donkey?" And he said, "I can't sell my donkey. How am I going to take my wood to the market if I don't have a donkey to carry it?" And the soldiers said, "Well, we'll buy your donkey too. How much do you want for your donkey and your wood?" So they bargained, and they came to a price, and the price was paid from the soldiers to the woodchopper, and immediately the soldiers took all of the wood off the back of the donkey and dumped it on the side of the road. And they were about to make their leave with the donkey when the woodchopper said, but my wood, I spent days and weeks cutting down these trees and hewing this wood." "Oh, we don't want the wood, we only want your donkey." So they went and left the poor woodchopper sitting on his pile of wood, bewailing his fate, saying to himself, "What about my wood?" Then that leads into the story about a Hasid. Now, he happened to be a very rich merchant, but very devoted to his rabbi, who was a great rabbi of great knowledge and insight. Now, this merchant deferred to his rabbi in all facets of his life. But there was one thing that really ate at him constantly, day after day. He longed to have a son who would be able to say Kaddish for him, to give him the rites of passage when he died. But he'd been married for almost 10 years, and his wife had not given birth to a child. So this ate at him day after day, until finally he could bear it no longer, because according to their faith, after 10 years, if a woman was barren, the man could seek a divorce. So the 10 years was coming up, and the merchant got up the courage to finally go and seek the counsel, in fact, ask for a divorce of his rabbi. But he knew that his rabbi was not very kind towards those who were seeking divorce. In fact, he didn't have much truck with it at all. But finally the rabbi, after a sleepless night, woke up very early before breakfast and made his way to the rabbi's house. Now, when he knocked on the door, and the wife answered the door and escorted him in to the sitting room and sat him down. Now, as the merchant was sitting there, the rabbi passed the door on the way to the dining room where he would have his breakfast, but he made no notice of the merchant sitting there. And again he passed the door after his breakfast was over, and then the merchant could hear him enter his study and hear him intoning his prayers, and the day went on. And lunchtime came around, and because the merchant had hastened to leave to be at the rabbi's house early, his stomach was starting to grumble and moan. But then he could smell the smell of the soup being cooked in the kitchen. And again the rabbi passed the living room, the sitting room door, and did not give him any acknowledgement. And after the lunch, the rabbi went back again to his study, and the day passed, and the evening came, and there was the merchant. No one had visited. He was very surprised that there was no one else coming to visit the rabbi to seek his counsel, only he sitting there alone in the sitting room. And then the merchant could smell the smell of dinner, in particular the kugels that were smelling, those kugels that I believe are somewhat like the French brioche or souffle, and he particularly loved kugels, and the wafting smell of this reached his nose, and his stomach grumbled even more, and he was somewhat surprised that the wife did not come out and invite him to join the evening meal. He was left, as the rabbi passed the door, once again to eat his meal. But then, after the rabbi had had his dinner and returned to his study, finally the wife of the rabbi came to the Hasid and invited him into the rabbi's presence. Now when he entered the rabbi's study, there on the table was a plate of kugel, and the smell wafted in the merchant's nose, and he sat down in front of the desk of the rabbi, and the rabbi asked him, "Well, what is it that you have come for?" And the Hasid blurted out his longing to have a son, and the fact that he'd been almost married for 10 years and his wife had not become pregnant, and he was seeking a divorce. "Oh," said the rabbi, have some kugel." So gratefully the Hasid took one mouthful of the kugel and found that his hunger completely dissipated. And the rabbi said to him, "Yes, you can have your divorce." bring your wife to me when it's the anniversary of your 10th year of marriage, and bring your marriage contract with you, and it'll be taken care of. Well, the Hasid was overjoyed with this, and so the divorce took place. And in due time, he married another woman. But year after year, for 6 years, she only had girls. So after this 6 years, of course the merchant was getting so downhearted and dispirited about that, he thought that he would have to seek a divorce from this one too. So he went back to the rabbi, and this time when he knocked on the door and the wife opened the door, she took him immediately into the rabbi's study, and he blurted out his story once again. And the rabbi says, yes, you can have a divorce. So the divorce took place, and in due time the Hasid took on another wife. And to his great joy, after a year, his wife gave birth to a son. And he was so devoted to this lad, who proved to be a brilliant young being, clever in every way. But after 3 years, the merchant found that he had to go on a journey across a great ocean. He could not bear to leave his beloved son behind. So he took a tutor and took the young boy on the journey across the ocean with him. But out in the ocean, a great storm came up, washing the decks of the ship on which they travelled. And the Hasid saw his beloved son being washed overboard and carried off into the depths, as he himself was washed into the great ocean. But as is the way of things, a mast from the ship floated by, and the desire for life being greater than his loss, he grabbed hold of the mast of the ship and was washed to a foreign shore. He made his way back to his homeland, and before he went to his home to give the dreadful news to his wife, he went straight to the house of the rabbi. This time, when he knocked on the door was opened by the rabbi himself, and the merchant, sobbing with loss and grief, was escorted into his study, where again there was a plate of kukul on the desk. The rabbi offered the kukul to the merchant, and he had lost his taste for kukul. Tears flowed down his cheeks as he told his story of loss to his rabbi. And the rabbi said, "I suppose you want another divorce?" "No, no," said the merchant. "I have had enough of divorces. You see what has happened to my life. I want no more divorces. My life is bereft. I have nothing. "Ah," said the rabbi, "you have not even had one divorce." And he handed him the newspaper of the day, which was the same day as the merchant had sat in front of him at his desk asking for the divorce from his seemingly barren wife. The merchant left the presence of the rabbi and returned to his wife. After another year, she gave birth to a boy. The merchant was equally devoted and loving to this son of his original marriage. The question that arises from these anecdotes and this story is simple. What is the significant element in this story of the merchant for you, which you can well equate, relates to that which was related about the dismantling of our house as being our spiritual journey? What is it that is the significant element in this story that might give us an opening to the recognition of what possibly could be the foundation stone that we still have for ourselves? What's the most significant element of this story?
The sun's just a reflection of the ego.
Yes.
The ego has to go.
Yes. And what's the foundation stone of our ego?
Desire.
Desire.
There's no desire now.
The desire for having someone there to bury you, which colors the merchant's life. But what is it in our own life? What is it that we can say is the foundation that remains of a house that's been dismantled along a spiritual journey? It still remains for us. What is it in us that can keep us bound?
It's the mind.
Mind, yes, indeed, mind. What is that foundation stone for you?
to see what's real.
Being
What
able.
isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So he brought into the society concept of what should be,
Beliefs, yes. Yeah.
and doesn't necessarily mean that it's based on the energetic truth of the way things should be.
No.
And so that's what is being shown in the end.
Yes.
The time wasn't right. We just had to be in the moment.
Yes.
If she would have given birth to a son, he might have had the fate of drowning.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Pushing.
Yes.
We cannot make our own path. It just has to happen.
Yes. Yes. If we go back to using this as a metaphor for the spiritual journey, we have to recognize that when our house has been dismantled, to leave bare our foundation stone, that in the course of this journey, that foundation stone is going to turn to quicksand, and that quicksand is going to become sand, and that sand is going to be blown away by life's divine wind. Why is it then so frightening to confront the recognition that our soul has been bared in terms of looking at that foundation? Why do we cling to it so? As we do, if we look at it, we have to be truthful.
Depends what you take support from.
That's right. Even I'm a good person is a foundation stone.
So if you support in the spiritual, you never have a problem about letting go. But if it's in the physical, you will.
You certainly will, if you cling to beliefs. So, food